And again, thank you all for joining and taking time out of your busy day. We will get started in just one more minute. As a reminder, this is a recorded session. We will provide time at the end of the session, probably about 40 minutes for Q&A. Feel free to type in your questions in the Zoom application, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Both audio copies and a copy of the slides will be made available at the end of the discussion as well. Well, very good. I do appreciate everybody making the time to spend a little bit of time with us today. We've got participants from all over the world, so we do appreciate your taking that time out to spend with us. We are going to spend the next 40 minutes or so talking about pushing it to the limit, how personalized messages will help you drive engagement and revenue from both automated push and email. And this is coming on the heels of a very exciting announcement that our company made late last week about the merger with a company called Jing. And we'll get into some more of that detail as we talk about the product and the opportunity. Let me first introduce our co-hosts who are joining me today. Of course, everybody is remote, so we are all joining you virtually. My name is Jeff Kupiecki. I'm the CEO of Power Inbox, and I want to welcome Jonathan Stefanski to our panel.
Jeff, thanks so much for having us. Looking forward to a really exciting session together.
And John is relatively new to our organization, but not new to the industry. And he joins us as the general manager of Jing. And our chairman and co-founder, Aryeh Mergi. Welcome, Aryeh.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
Well, great. So we've got a very exciting program that we put together. We've got just a couple of slides that we'll walk through, but really make this more of a conversation. Both John and Aryeh have spent time talking to probably hundreds of publishers. And I think they formed a very, very interesting perspective on how the industry is changing and how a potential product offering that we are working on could address some of the fundamental challenges that we see in the industry. But before we jump right into it, I wanted to get the audience involved. We know that everybody is at a different state right now in managing and coping with the current situation. And so if we can, we'd like to just do a quick poll. In a second, you'll see on your screen the following question. We just want to ask you, how are you experiencing a change in your business because of what's happened around COVID-19 and the economic response to the pandemic? So hopefully now on your screen, you'll see a poll. If you don't mind, just take a quick second. Let us know if you've seen a dip in your business, if it's stayed the same, or maybe like a few cases, it's going up. And that just helps us level set on some of the folks that we know who are on the presentation here, and we can kind of address our comments to that. We'll give it another couple of seconds before I close this poll and then show those results. Okay, last couple of seconds to get your vote in. Okay, it seems like a pretty mixed group. Let's share the results there. So when we asked the folks kind of who's seen a dip in the business, about evenly split between a definite dip or stay the same, a very small, it looks like one person voted that is going up. Well, we definitely appreciate that. These are very, very challenging times. And hopefully some of the material now that we're going to talk about can play into the broader themes that we believe have occurred even prior to this kind of unique situation that we are experiencing. And hopefully as people see the opportunities that sometimes these adverse conditions place upon us, you'll agree that we are very optimistic about changes that we think folks can do using personalized messaging. Let's first set the stage a little bit. We talk, as I mentioned at the start, with lots and lots of publishers, and these are probably the most common things that we hear from them, that a lot of their traffic is kind of, if you will, blocked or, if you will, tied up on this reliance on walled gardens. When we ask our partners where they get their traffic from, it's overwhelmingly and increasingly from Facebook, Google, or even Apple now, when you think about their control over the mobile ecosystem. And the challenge is, for many of them, that's changed the way that they try and reach out and build audience and get users to come to their site. It used to be that people would just kind of type it in, or they'd kind of just, if you will, pull into their site. Now the challenge is that publishers have to go push content out. They have to go reach out to where that audience is engaged, and that may not be directly typing into their URL anymore. And so because of that, we're finding, what we're hearing is that people are finding it very difficult to aggregate the audience as they once were able to do very easily. Add to it a very difficult challenge to kind of invest in technology. And overall, as users have more and more choices for where they get their information, the overall trust in media is waning. If that wasn't hard enough, when we look at people's business models, we're finding more and more of the advertising pie is being taken by Google, Facebook, and Amazon. These stats now are probably even out of date, but it's at least 70% of the US advertising online spending controlled by those three. So you have these kind of two challenges that publishers face, where they've got traffic, if you will, that is being controlled by some of the bigger players, and their monetization also in those same buckets. And it's getting very hard for them to differentiate. So as we talk to these publishers, what we hear time and time again is that what they really want to focus on is how do they effectively reach their core audience, the readers, the ones that really want to consume their content. And in order for them to do that, they really need to better understand their audience, if you will, be an expert at that audience in order for them to know what content to show them. They obviously have to be extremely competitive on the technology side, using that to understand user interests. And ultimately, where they really can differentiate, especially against, let's say, social media, is to leverage the trust of their brand. We've done some external surveys. We posted that on our website, but it's very interesting that the real reason that individuals will still come back to a publisher site is because the trust they have with that brand and the fact that they know that content has a higher editorial standard than if they would just be getting that through a social share or a search result. So with that as background, what I want to do is now kind of ask Aryeh to maybe talk a little bit about how does he see, in this world of very high challenges for publishers, what's going to be maybe the future of what they should be thinking about as it relates to messaging.
Thanks, Jeff. You talked about the publisher challenges. These are really dramatic challenges that are diminishing their profits and putting parts of the industry at existential risks. And this is expected to get worse if nothing changes. But I want to start with the consumer challenges, where my passion to solve this problem started. Consumers today have access to an endless amount of content, but there is no place that can allow them to get the content that interests them without distraction and without missing content that they would like to be updated on. They can consume content either at aggregators, like Facebook, Twitter, Google, where most of the readers and consumers are getting their content today. They can go, of course, to their preferred publisher's site or mobile app, and they can even set up Google Alerts in order to get the news. Well, most will not set up Google Alerts, obviously. It's manual, you have to set up every topic that interests you, and you have to go to another service to do it. And the end result is not compelling, as anyone that tried it knows. With the consumer preferred publisher, their technology is limited and they rarely learn the consumer interest and personalize the content that interests the consumer and making sure that it gets delivered to the consumer or to reader when it comes out. So if you didn't visit the site, you may just miss the piece of content that could be interesting for you. And we are all very busy, so can't poll the publisher all the time to check if there is something new in the topics that interest us. With Facebook and Twitter, consumers don't get everything that interests them, as the Facebook algorithm doesn't optimize for interest of the publisher side, it optimizes for keeping the consumer in the Facebook platform, which also create the biggest problem of those platforms. That's the distraction that created for consumers. So you go there to get updated, but you get sucked in, and in many cases losing hours on an endless feed that you don't really need it. Still, Facebook is today the most common place for consumer to go and get updates and to read their news. And this is actually the publisher's biggest problem, and which is what created this crisis in the publisher world. There must be another solution, and this is where our passion is here at Power Inbox with our new Jing for Publisher product. Look at how my experience as a consumer can be with the Jing product. Say that I'm an avid COVID-19 treatments reader, and I want to know everything about new treatments and anything that worked and didn't work. Wouldn't it be great if when an article about something that worked for a COVID-19 patient, I would get a push notification or an email update updating me that this article just came out, and with just one click allow me to read it at the Seattle Times, in this case, website. And all of this without me needing to set up anything and to tell the publisher that that's actually what interests me, or to do anything like this. And you may ask, yes, but you need to be subscribed for this. Well, publisher need to make this easy for me, and they aren't. They should offer this to me at the right time with the right call for action, telling me that they will not abuse my subscription, they will send me only what interests me, and so on. The chances for me to subscribe to such a service are significantly higher. We see that publishers that do that get many more subscribers and will get them to consume much more of their content, and as important are really delighting their readers on every cent of content that interests the reader.
You know, Aryeh, with your example here, I think it really clarifies. Many of us are very familiar with the traditional email sign up, which seems very generic. Everyone just gets, hey, join our newsletter. What I'm seeing with your example is this is very specific to even what I was browsing or what I might be interested in browsing, but very topic specific. Is that what you're saying is kind of the difference here on using a push sign up from like something like Jing?
Definitely. I think that if a publisher suggests to me to sign up to get on a specific topic that I'm just now reading, and also telling me that that's what I will get in the future, topics that interest me, the chances for me to sign up are significantly higher. And frankly, many publishers, it's not just that they don't do this. When I want to sign for news, I need to look at the website or their website on how to do this. So they need to be very active in offering this to me. Of course, there is a balance of not disturbing my experience, but it can be done significantly better than what is done today.
Well, great. Let's get John in on the conversation. I can imagine this must be very difficult to set up, or it requires a lot of complexity. Now, John, why don't you help us understand a little bit more about how you think about the product and maybe the setup here for a typical publisher to think about.
Yeah, so Jeff, thanks so much. So I think, obviously some of the things that you talked about in terms of massive, people constraints when it comes to publishers is a massive challenge that they're facing. And, the way that we've constructed this is really very much focused on ease of use. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, of literally how simple this is with a single line of code. But I think if we kind of take a step back and kind of take what Aryeh said of this idea of personalization, there's kind of 4 legs that we look at this, right? Which is personalization, taking and sending content that's relevant to my interests based upon my behavior on your website. Automation, right? And that goes to what we talked about just now, is that taking the onus and the burden off of the publishers, not having to create this complex system, but doing that work for them and doing that autonomously across different ways, meaning the way that we collect the content, the way that we deliver that content, the way that we report on that content, having the platform do it all for them and really taking the complete burden off their shoulders. The third leg, if we think about that stool, is monetization of not only driving incremental views to their website, which obviously results in additional revenue, but the ability to opt in through our demand partners and create Monetized and create a brand new revenue stream for this audience. And finally, we don't look at this as a push solution, but really multi-channel of we want to be the platform for how you reach your audience, how you communicate with them. And that's much more than just push. It's email, it's other ways that we reach our audience. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of the platform. But at the end of the day, it's really a platform built specifically for the challenges that those digital publishers are facing today. And it's those four legs of personalization, automation, monetization, multi-channel that really kind of drive what the Jing platform is really all about.
And given that half our audience have told us that they are experiencing a dip or even a decline in their business because of the current situation, I imagine a new source of being able to kind of monetize, if you will, kind of creating a revenue stream sounds very, very kind of welcome, right now.
Yes, it's from a sales perspective, it's always easier when you say this is not how much it's going to cost you, but this is how much money it can help you make. People's ears perk up in that conversation, so it makes our job on the sales side a heck of a lot easier.
Well, John, I'd like to give you the opportunity to maybe walk people through what this product looks like.
Great, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Absolutely. Hang on one second. All right, so I'm just going to give you a very quick background. If people want a more detailed demo, we can set that up after this call, and we'll give you information about how to do that. But just very quickly, in a minute or two, to give you an idea of really what the platform or the dashboard of the Jing technology looks like. So when we talk about that automation, and this is really the key scene, is that what happens is when you put this code on your site, it automatically indexes your content, whether that's evergreen content, your historical content, or new content that you publish. So you don't have to be busy going in and constantly building that content. The technology does it for you. So that takes a huge burden off of the publisher's hands, that it's not an issue where they have to go in and create this content. They have to decide what images, what headlines, right, what audiences that they want to send this to. But the platform does that autonomously for them and really indexes all of the content, again, both historical and new content. And once we've done that, we kind of think about this as an automated content library. When we want to decide, when the system decides, and you can do this both manually or you can do this right yourself or autonomously, is what happens is you'll start seeing things send audiences interested in X, French elections, Bitcoin, etc. What this is starting to do when we think about that personalization is that depending upon the specific article that's getting indexed here, will then be sent to people, again, autonomously based upon their interests and likes and desires, based upon their actual user behavior on your website. And again, that's happening all behind the scenes. You can actually set up how you want that to occur in terms of the time you want that to occur, the frequency, the type of content. Another great way, and this is a fantastic tip that we tell our publishers, is not only does it take customers that are, occasional, users and move them into power users or power users to superpower users, but people who haven't been at your site for a while is to re-engage with inactive users. So you can create these personalized messages, again, to inactive audiences as well. So it's a great technology for both taking your average, consumer and making them into a power consumer, and those who are really infrequent or inactive and moving them in. And obviously behind the scenes, we're doing everything on the data side to show you how it's performing on mobile versus web, how it's performing in terms of open over time, CTR over time. And for me, and again, this is a demo account, but this is really a great, technology as well as the notification heat map that actually shows exactly what time of day people are interested in specific content. And this then maps back into that system that, as we say, sending the right content, which is the autonomous way that we capture that, to the right, audience, meaning what they're interested in. And this is how we do it at the right time, by actually tracking the heat map of when people are actually engaging with the content within the platform itself. And again, as you see, newsletter is unlocked. That's a new product where we think about multi-channel. Today, it's really a push technology. We're currently in beta for our newsletter, and you'll continue to see an evolution of the platform to be, as we say, that fourth leg of multi-channel. But again, really critical, and kind of to answer your original question in a very long way, super simple with no bandwidth required on the publisher side. Let us handle the creation, the distribution, and the monetization for you using our technology. So let me hand things back to you now,
Well,
Jeff.
you can
Yep.
leave this on for a second. Arya, maybe I can ask you, the as an investor, I think somebody who's seen probably hundreds of companies talk about engagement platforms. I think you really were the driver of us tracking this company probably for several years, and it's only recently we made the decision to go out and merge with them. What about this platform made it so compelling and maybe even differentiated from what else you saw out in the marketplace?
Or other solutions in the market um, are such that there is nothing that combines everything together. You know, if you're a publisher, you have the ability to go and purchase separately from different vendors the different elements of the solution. For example, you go to a push notification sending service or to an email sending service. You need the customer data platform. You need the subscriber acquisition solutions. You need an AI to build the interest graph of your readers and to decide when and at which channel to send. You need an automatic sending infrastructure. You need orchestrating all of this together. And of course, reporting and management and many more things. And not all of them are available. So you will have also to invest a lot of development effort internally. Practically, if you want such a solution, you will have practically to build it and integrate from many different vendors, and you will never be able to get to the optimization level that we can reach. So as John explained, just an integration of one line of code with our solution, you get everything that will work, and you don't need to do anything more. Even the more technological publishers like the New York Times and similar, which invest tens of millions of dollars and have hundreds of developers, couldn't get even close to the level provided by Jing, both in the delivered consumer experience and in the actual revenues generated. And this is with a lot of investment. And we offer, and the Jing platform offer, a very simple integration, and from now on, everything is working. And I think that's the biggest differentiation from my perspective.
Yeah, let me just piggyback on that, Arya, which is one of the things you talked about as well, is it's not just that I'd have to buy a push solution, an email solution, etc., but then that data gets shared across those multiple channel distributions. So the more platforms that you're using it across, the more intelligent the platform becomes, and really says, and I'll give you one simple example of that, is if I'm using it for a separate solution for email and a separate solution for push, the same content may be going to the same audience as opposed to an integrated solution. You could say this content's best for this push user versus sending to them via email. So when we look at it, it's not just this idea of keeping it, single vendor as opposed to multiple vendor, but there's an economy of scale there, or intelligence, having multiple solutions, right, and being able to share that data across those multiple platforms.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, great, John, and I think that's a good segue too. If I'm going to just throw another slide here, where you can maybe kind of help our readers, help our listeners here, just kind of understand this process of how is it that they would be able to kind of get this to work on their website.
Yep. So I can't underscore this enough. It's literally a single line of code, right? That's the integration, right? And it always amazes our customers where we have a phone call with them. They say, hey, we're ready to get started. We ask for the list of domains. We send them back an integration guide. An integration guide is that single line of code. That's what's required to do that. And I think that's part of a huge component, that to get things started, it doesn't require IT support. It doesn't require heavy, manpower and integration. It's a single line of code. And then that's when we start, kind of having the Jing magic, where, analyzing that content in terms of what people are interested in. And that creates that user interest graph. And again, to my point, being able to do that multi-platform as well. We have that content library, which I showed you. So then we're identifying your interest tied to the content that we have and sending you the most highly matched content based upon that. We deliver that and then continue to optimize. So it's a full circle of continuing to really improve the type of content you get, the more content that we're sending, the more activity, the more intelligent the AI becomes in terms of being able to actually send you the most highly optimized articles that are really inherently linked with your interests and likes based upon your behavior.
Cool. So I think I have another poll. Let me see what was next here.
Yeah.
Actually, let's first talk about kind of, if you think about why we call this the Jing magic, you know, especially as it, again, differentiates the solution. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I think, you know, when the reason we call it magical, because it almost seems too good to be true. And most of the time when something's too good to be true, it is, right? But the beautiful thing here is that it's literally this line of code. And we get feedback from our customers like, I can't believe how simple this is, right? And that's literally frictionless. But that's just a start, right? And then having the AI automate that process for you of indexing your content, delivering that content, continues on that path of it. But it's not just about simplicity, right? But it's intelligence of the way that the platform is better at identifying what your interests are, being able to do that, right? And drive revenue at the end of the day. So it's not just, you know, the value proposition for publishers doesn't just solve that pain point that we talked about at the beginning of, you know, making it easy and I don't have resources because you don't need resources, but more critically, it creates this ownership of your audience because you're giving them and reaching out to them proactively with the content they want to see, right? And that's something we see all the time from our customers is that they say, you know, don't spam me with content I'm not interested in, but if you're sending me something that I really care about, keep sending it to me, keep sending me that information. And that's what we're doing. We're sending them content that they love and they're interested in, and they're happy to get this content. And ultimately that creates an amazing user experience. And then from a publisher perspective, you know, a significant lift in revenue. And then being able to lay on top of it, as we said, a brand new revenue stream allows our publishers to double dip in terms of organic growth, better user engagement, and a brand new revenue stream from the platform as well.
You know, if we link this back to some of the problems we talked about in the beginning of the webinar, which is that there's this fundamental shift that has to happen for publishers. Most of their traffic today is unknown. Let's call it anonymous or even drive-by. It's coming from social shares. So to build an interest-based, behavioral interest-based kind of a system requires an identity. It requires a knowledge of an end user. And I think most of our publishers that we talk to, there's just so few of their users that they actually have in a so-called login state that they know who they are. Most of it are people that just, you know, identify by a cookie, and we know that's going away as well. So this will, if you will, almost accelerate that need to know your audience and be able to do that where you can actually reach back out to them.
100%.
And I think that kind of brings us to our second poll question, if I can. Let me see if I do this right. And so the next question. So on this topic of being able to kind of identify how many of your users are in a known relationship with you, we kind of just wanted to assess from the audience here. Would you say how many of your website visitors, if you have 1 million website visitors, is it less than 20% that you can actually market back to them? That means send them an email, send them a push, maybe they use your app. Or is it 20 to 30%, or is it over 30%? And I'll just give a couple seconds now for folks to answer this question, then we'll show those results. But while you're voting, this is a really interesting trend. We hear again and again from especially the larger, you know, sometimes even older media companies that they don't have more than 10% in that relationship. So let's see kind of what our audience here says. All right, I'll see if there's anybody else voting. I'll give it another second here. Okay, so let's share those results. And sure enough, 70% of you have fewer than 20% of your audience in a known state. So think about that. We're competing with Facebook and Google where the user's always logged in. That means there's always an identity and they can track all that behavior against that identity. For our publishers to be able to compete, they need to create that knowledge of those end users, the understanding of who they are, so they can reach back out to them. It's really owning that audience. And so that trend is something that we think is going to be really important as people think about how do they create known and, if you will, kind of marketable users from the anonymous users that we have today. You know what? I'd like to now ask Arye to just maybe talk briefly, what would be some of the benefits that you would see or that you've heard from publishers that would be able to adopt a solution like Jing in terms of what they could see in terms of results?
By being able to match and send the right content to each of their readers, and by actively and effectively facilitating for them to subscribe to personalized push notification and emails, we enable publishers to send more messages to significantly more active subscribers that are actually engaged because they get content that really interests them. The numbers that we see with our publisher are amazing. They get more than double the traffic that they had before, and as a result, they are doubling the revenues, and all of this at a negligible effort and cost of the integration of the Jing platform. But as important to the numbers, and as Jeff said, the Jing product allows publishers to create direct relationship with their readers, and having the email address as the core identifier can solve the problem created by the elimination of the third-party cookies and replacing it with a better identifier, the email address, that actually enables, as Jeff said again, a seamless logged-in user experience and practically matching the competition space between publishers and Facebook.
Arya, you raised this topic about the cookie going away. You know, what I've been reading is that Google had previously announced through their Chrome updates that they weren't trying to move away from third-party cookies. People thought maybe with Corona that would get permanently deferred, but it sounds like they're still moving forward, and that probably in just another year or so, we will see the end of third-party cookies. How do you see that trend really impacting those people that rely on that today for retargeting, for audience segmentation, for even acquiring traffic, if there is no third-party cookie available to them?
Well, publishers are already in a significant problem because of user moving to Facebook. I think the removal of the third-party cookie can be like a death sentence for many of them. And the reason for that is that this is the only way that they can identify which ads to show the customers, to personalize the content, and to do other things. And they must find another solution to do that.
Yeah, this challenge seems to just be getting greater for folks. But on the real positive and optimistic side, maybe John, you can share. We've had already, even though it's been very recent that we've joined forces with Jing, but we've already, I think, had some folks leverage the product. Maybe you can share a couple of examples or stories from folks you've been talking to who have been using the platform.
Yeah, I think what's super exciting about that is when you see kind of the diversity of the publishers, that it's not a single type of publisher or a single vertical of publishers, but it's publishers that have that same in common thread of, I want to reach my audience in the most effective way and engage them with content that's most relevant for them. And so when you kind of look at this, you'll see some gaming publishers to travel to traditional news sites, and that when we look at the results, it really is very consistent of a significant lift in terms of, number one, increased page views, two, the ability to drive increased revenue, right? And also the other thing we see, which is, interesting, is the lower unsubscribe rate. Is that, that's historically been a challenge when it comes to push, is a high unsubscribe rate because people feel like they're getting spammed with content. And we've actually seen a very significant decrease, and that cuts across the board, across these different verticals of publishers, because what we're hearing is that because we're sending relevant content, that I'm more likely to want to continue to opt in for that and not unsubscribe. And that's a big impact as well, outside of just the obvious metrics like page views and revenue. But we're seeing that really across vertical publishers, those seeing trends across the board.
John, does this take a long time to kind of identify the people might be interested, figure out who the right decision makers are, internally make a decision? How have some of these processes been from your experience?
Yeah, so I think there's two main, audiences that we tend to talk to that have the most interest. Those people on the audience development or retention side of the house, right? And the other side is the marketing or revenue side of the house. So it kind of plays to both audiences. And in some companies, it's much more, people focus on audience growth and retention, and other side on revenue or marketing side. So it kind of bifurcated our sales strategy for different parts of the house, depending upon the customer.
Hmm. Ari, do you see a type of publisher strategy emerging from these types of opportunities that might be able to best leverage this technology to even change how they compete among their own peers for either getting audience or monetizing that audience?
Or definitely, I think that that publisher that want to shine to their peer needs to serve better their readers, and that's exactly what our platform is providing: the ability to reach to the reader when the content that interests them is published at the moment that it is published. So that's significant for readers.
And I'll just link back. This is our own experience now watching traffic trends over the last 8 weeks or so. But we have found to kind of build on the earlier point about trust in these publishers, we're seeing that due to the corona and people now having a lot more time indoors, at home, shelter in place, we're seeing enormous growth in opens on messages, on engagement. And in talking to our publishers, there might be some challenges on revenue because, again, what the rates are in the market. But what people are seeing is that as the anxiety has increased for their consumers, for their readers, as the world is a much more difficult place to navigate, people are turning to the brands that they trust, to the areas that they've gotten their news in the past, and they're doubling down, if you will, on interacting with that content. So whereas somebody might have seen an engaged user once or twice a week, they're now seeing them every day of the week. And I think that trend might continue even post this crisis as people really leverage that. They've created the strong audience, that relationship with that audience, and build on that by being able to market back to them. John, maybe you can summarize for our audience here, kind of what are the other feedback that we've been getting, not just from the customers that you talked about, maybe in general. I think there's now over 60 different folks using this platform, and we obviously have 600 that are using the overall Power Inbox system. So at some point, hopefully everybody will be using everything, but maybe share a little bit about what you've heard so far on that.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to a lot of the things that we've talked about earlier, right? And I can't underscore the ease of use enough, but I think at the end of the day, right, the number one, challenge is revenue, right? And this is something we talked about earlier, but anything we can do to make, provide additional revenue at this critical time is something that's extremely welcome. And, it's actually fun from a sales cycle to be really solving a critical need that they have. And the other, critical need is taking back ownership of the audience. So I think we come to the table with a value proposition that's extremely, receptive, and publishers are hungry. They need to evolve. They need to change because of the challenges that Ari talked about and that you talked about in terms of Facebook, right, and Google, and ownership and identity of our audience. Is they're so hungry for a solution, but don't have the resources to solve that. And we really solve those key pain points. And I think the last, key thing of why we've been successful and we're seeing some really rapid growth in the customer base is the service that we provide. At the end of the day, you can have, the greatest technology in the world, and I've worked for some incredible technology companies in the past, and some not so great. And I think best technology doesn't always win, but providing an exceptional level of service and having your customer feel like you're part of their team and you're aligned with their goals and you're responsive to that makes all the difference in the world. So from a corporate culture perspective, we put a premium on the level of service, and we use that word exceptional on purpose, because that's kind of the corporate culture and the mantra behind it. And so when you kind of put solving a real critical need, doing it extremely easy and quickly for them, and doing that supported by the employees that are, incredibly dedicated to this, right, has really been, why we're seeing kind of a tremendous amount of love from our customers. It's not just about the check. The check certainly helps that we give them, but the ability that it's ease and we're there for them has really been, a great feeling that we've gotten, and a lot of love from our customers.
And if I can, build on that, John, I mean, one of the things that attracted us to this idea of merging with Jing is that I think Power Inbox is known in the industry as being very publisher oriented, always thinking about how we can help them grow their business, help them solve their problems, and bringing a solution like this, where we hope to continue to provide that same level of service that you talked about across all the product line, is what I think gets us excited and motivated as we get up every morning. So maybe John, some final thoughts that you might want to offer here before we open it up for Q&A, just to help people understand kind of how they should really think about this solution as they're looking at tools to help them through these difficult times.
Yeah, so I think we spent a lot of time today talking about push, and we're very bullish on push for lots of reasons. One, you don't need to be on the website, right, to reach your audience. Even if your computer's closed, when they wake up in the morning and turn it on, those push notifications are resonant for them. So it's an incredible platform. And we talked about some other ways in terms of re-engaging inactive audiences and ways to use push. So we've kind of spent a lot of time there. But one thing I would, throw out there, and it's important, is that push is a component of what we're doing. And you'll soon start hearing a lot more of the same intelligence and the same ease of use when it comes to push to email, of sending personalized emails, right? Personalized newsletters, personal alerts via email using our same technology. And throughout the next few quarters, you'll continue to see the evolution of that. So that multi-channel part, we haven't spent so much time on today, but all the greatness that you've seen when it comes to that personalization, automation, and monetization will be available for more than just push. And that's really kind of the vision of the Jing platform, and leveraging all the benefits we have as part of the larger Power Inbox team in terms of all the resources we have there, right, is why we feel it's a tremendous winning combination between the two.
Well, excellent. I think at this point, I had suggested we would talk for about 40 minutes. So Arya and John, I think at this point, let's throw it out to our audience. We have a Q&A through the Zoom application. You can submit some questions. I'll give folks a minute or two to do that. And then we'll proceed to wrap up and allow people to get back to their days. So if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A, and I will share those with our panelists. All right, we have one coming in, and again, we're looking to make this very practical for people. So I'll ask you, John. Somebody asked about, they have an international customer base. How can they easily schedule notifications or emails, maybe by time zone?
Yeah, so a lot of our publishers obviously are not just selling to the US market, but worldwide. So when that scheduler we talked about is automated towards local time for the market. So if you have users in Europe, right, let's say they're 5 or 6 hours, behind the US, it'll be delivered in their own time zone versus, a US audience, East Coast, West Coast, et cetera, to be able to do that. We actually have just released, as part of the acquisition on the website, you can see a case study with a company called Gogi. And actually is one of the challenges they specifically had, where they have a worldwide audience. And really one of the value propositions they had, with the platform is being able to actually time those different notifications to different audiences. So, if you're interested in learning more about kind of how they've leveraged it, you can see that on our website. We actually have that case study there. But it's something that, is absolutely critical when you have a worldwide audience and even within the US itself.
Great. Next question, I'll ask Arya to help us answer. You gave the example earlier about you tracking the stories on COVID-19. In your experience, what kind of push notifications do audiences most like to see? If someone's thinking about what do they push, what would you recommend?
So I think publishers need to look at the consumption pattern of their users, of their readers, and be able to personalize to each user segments, and practically even micro segments, the experience based on the user needs. So definitely breaking news is something that we see on the top of the list. People want to know when something important came out. People want to hear about things that are in their location. Local news is always important. People are connected to their community and want to know what's new and what's happening there. And they want to, of course, get stories about their interest, about what they already read in the past, typically, and so on. And most users also are interested to see advertisement that is tied directly to their interests. If they looked on something in the past that they want to see some updates on that, and if there are relevant advertisement, that's something that also interests them.
And as I gather, the platform allows for both manual selection of content or automated. So in some ways, that interest graph could be built very easily by looking at people's actual behavior. One last question that we'll have time for, John, if you might just talk a bit about pricing, kind of what's the way that people should think about budgeting for a tool like this?
Sure. So we have a couple of different pricing models, two really main ones, which is one SaaS solution. So everything we do is really based on that kind of software as a service monthly subscription fee based upon the number of subscribers that you have. For those customers that opt in to the monetization, we decrease that SaaS fee a bit. And then basically once they cover the cost of that SaaS fee, we do a rev share on that. So at the end of the month, we're cutting them a check for the difference to cover the SaaS fee. So really the core solution is price is a SaaS fee. And then if you opt in to monetization, once that gets covered, we then do a rev share for the rest. We do also offer managed services solution as well. So people who want us to really take complete control, even though this is very simple, provide best practices, analyze their performance, monthly reviews, quarterly business reviews, that's an option as well. But at the end of the day, kind of the core way we sell this is based upon volume of number of subscribers. It's not based on number of sends. You can send as much sends as you want, but really a function of the number of subscribers you have and whether you opt into the monetization or not.
I think that point about we're looking to charge people on number of subscribers as opposed to sends really differentiates from maybe what people are very familiar with in the ESP, the email world, where you're paying for every email you send, which kind of, if you will, works against then the desire to kind of engage. By doing it on subscribed users, we're really aligning with what people are caring about, which is getting somebody to engage no matter how many pushes they receive.
Correct. Yeah, listen, we don't want to constrain people on how the frequency that they reach out. We want to reach out to them the optimal way and not be concerned about that, right? And that's why we kind of took that angle that you talked about, which is focused on the subscribers and not the sends.
Well, great. Given we're going to wrap up now, I'd like to ask one last question to our audience. Based on what you've heard over the last 45 minutes, how interested are you in learning more about personalized messaging? So strong yes, strong no, or maybe you're in the middle. So I'll give people a chance to answer those questions, and then we'll share them, and we'll make some final remarks. All right, well, great news. This is a great opportunity for me to also thank our phenomenal marketing team, Jordan and Renee. You'll be very pleased to see that 86% of the people all think that they're now very interested in personalized messaging. So that's a great sign. I'd like to now move to kind of some final thoughts. I'll start with Aryeh, if you just want to wrap up, what final things you want to leave our audience with around this topic.
So I think as final words, I can say that, readers that get the content that they are interested about sent to them as it is published are really delighted from the experience, and they feel served well by the publishers. Publishers from the other side need this both in order to serve better their readers, and in order to survive and reclaim the revenue share from the Facebooks of the world. So I believe that such a service is really a must for publishers.
Great. And John, maybe your final thoughts, as well as it looks like we've got some calls to action here you can share.
Yeah, so I think, we're solving a critical, need for publishers, right? At the end of the day, somebody's going to solve this problem, right? Whether it's us or somebody else, and we hope it's us. But this is going to have to be solved for publishers to continue to exist. And so we're very excited about that challenge. And, we feel like we can rise to the occasion to solve that through the platform we have, right? And through this AI solution and the early results that we've had and the tremendous growth that we've had, I think is starting to vindicate that the vision that we have around this automation, personalization, monetization, multi-channel is really the way to go. And you'll see continued, serious investment, especially post-merger, on the technology development side of things. So keep an eye out. And I think that's a great segue in terms of, that information is available at powerinbox.com now. You'll see more information about the platform, case studies, one-pagers to download. So a lot of that, and we'll continue. We have a fantastic marketing team, and you'll continue to see new content there. So I really advise you to see what we're doing on the Jinx side, plus what we're doing on the overall Power Inbox side, right, in terms of our core products. And if you want a custom demo, right, much more detailed than what we showed you here, you can always drop an email to say hello at powerinbox.com, and then we'll get back to you, as soon as possible to set you up with a more personalized, no pun intended, demo of the platform.
Great. Well, I really want to thank our panelists, Arya and John, for taking the time out today to share some of their thoughts and experience. To everybody who joined us remotely, we very much appreciate you taking your time and sharing or allowing us to share with you this information. I just want to give a little plug. You'll get emails about this, but these slides and presentation will be available if anybody wants to get a copy of that. We also have already an editorial calendar between now and the end of the summer, where every couple of weeks we'll have another webinar on a different aspect of what we believe are critical challenges facing publishers. And please stay tuned for that so that you'll be able to kind of see our next content. I believe it's going to be about direct ad serving, and we'll be able to kind of share that with you before the end of May. I want to thank everybody again, and if I can, just remind everyone, stay safe, stay inside, and thank you all for the time today. We appreciate it.